Hello, everyone. We're now live coast to coast. Welcome to Firmidable's webcast, built to grow how high volume disability firms scale without chaos, with our special guest, Nikhil Pai of Chronicle. I'm Nathan Chapman, president of Firmidable Law Firm Marketing, and I'll be your moderator for today's webcast. You know what makes me sad? It's puppies, adorable puppies left at the animal shelter. Like, who would do that? Seriously, who? Oh, wait. Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. I, I was getting personal, and I now remember what I wanted to talk about is what is it that makes me sad professionally? That's the question. Well, what makes me sad professionally is leaving money on the table. And as a law firm marketer, now in my 35th year, I see this all the time. In fact, just last week, I talked to an attorney who said his case levels were stagnant. He believed professional marketing was the solution. He believed correctly Firmidable was the solution. But you know what? He was scared. He said if this works, he might have to hire more employees. He might have to actually knock down a wall to expand his office space. And even though his income was stagnant, he was afraid to grow. And you know what? It's not just new clients. I hear this from some of Firmidable's best existing happy attorney clients. Things are working great. They're making great money. But sometimes we'll point out those ads that are working so well. Now, whether it's digital or television, doesn't matter. Maybe we could reach even more potential clients if we ran more of the ads. There's people we're not reaching. Now, happily, some of those firms, they grab that additional opportunity. But some say their team's at capacity now. Okay, well, good. Well, I'm glad we're keeping everybody busy. But what if we could shift some of that work away from administration into things more meaningful, that work that actually increases your bottom line? Could we increase capacity without hiring? Okay, so what makes me happy? It's that we have a great topic today, and we're going to address those very issues. And I'm certainly happy that you're here with us today. So to set the stage, let's start with an audience poll. All right, you should see it now. The question is, when you try to grow your caseload, what obstacles do you encounter or anticipate? And you can choose more than one. Is it A, hiring more employees, B, onboarding new employees, C, more physical office space needed, D, falling behind on existing work, or E, loss of quality of your work? All right, remember you can vote for more than one. All right, so it looks to me like the very highest was D. 72% of you said falling behind on existing work, with a close second, the fear of needing to hire more employees. Dropping back some into third would be onboarding new employees. Fourth, loss of quality of your work. And last, more office physical space. Okay, well, that's helpful. That is definitely the challenge. So I'm happy now to introduce today's presenter, Nikhil Pai. Nikhil leads the team behind Chronicle, the platform helping SSD firms automate case tracking, ERE monitoring, and document workflows. Chronicle currently monitors more than 177,000 cases and 7.5 million SSA documents across 2,100 disability professionals. If there's anyone who knows how to scale a disability practice, it's got to be Nikhil. So with that, I will now turn it over to Nikhil. Nikhil, thanks for being here today.
Excited to be here today, and thank you, Nathan, for the introduction. I think this will be a really great session. And the reason why I'm so excited about this is in disability law, scaling a business is a uniquely hard challenge. There's a lot of nuances that are specific to the field that don't exist in any other field, which is why we're so passionate about trying to solve these problems. Honestly, it comes down to the structure of working with the SSA. Rather than having a kind of easy back and forth communication with the SSA, they make it set up so it's naturally difficult to actually get the information you need to move cases forward. Um, so it's not about competence. It's not about understanding the law. It's structural. It's just the way you interact can make it slow and difficult. Um, and so the way we think about how that structure actually works against you in disability is the SSA doesn't warn you. When it comes to actually getting any information, you have two options. One, the mail, right? It's waiting on the mail for any notices, any decisions, any deadlines. You get this piece of mail that comes out to you. The USPS can be slow or lose your mail, and the clock starts and you don't even know what's going on. Um, Otherwise, you have the ERE, which is an antiquated portal that's just hard to kind of get information out of. Second is volume outruns memory. As you guys scale your firms, you have hundreds of cases going on at a time, hundreds to even thousands. And that number of cases and number of pieces of, those number of tasks that you have to do for each case quickly outruns your ability to remember every single client. Um, there's just no good mental model to hold onto that amount of information. For many people, they turn to a case management system or other tools, spreadsheets. But as you guys know, it's really easy to lose track of all your cases and let things slip by. Last is the amount of time it takes to process a case. Cases on average take 18 months, they can take even longer. And what often is the pattern is you file that initial application or that request for hearing, and then it goes silent. And there's many months of just waiting around, and then suddenly that day comes where the SSA has 10 forms out to you and your client that you need to quickly turn around. Um, and your team is left scrambling. And so that kind of dormant state lets you be kind of complacent until those pieces of mail come out and suddenly you're scrambling. So that structure really makes it hard for growing firms to stay on top of their cases, just given the way that the SSA likes to work. For us, we see three main failure modes for firms as they're scaling. First is the missed deadline, right? Most of the questionnaires or notices have a 10-day deadline from when they're mailed out. And unfortunately, right, that's the thing. The SSA counts the clock starting from the second they mail it out, not when it arrives to you. And so for many folks, that either means they get the letter on day 5, or if you're a national firm, right, you're taking clients from across the country. Often that mail comes out from the OHO or the field office or the DDS processing the case. And if you're across the country, that deadline may have passed by the time you even get that piece of mail. Luckily, the SSA is pretty, understanding of the fact that mail can be slow and they don't hold you that deadline. But when you think about that client relationship, the fact that your client may see that the deadline has passed leaves them upset, and just isn't a great client experience. So the missed deadline is a big one. Second, kind of building off of that, is the client call you weren't ready for. So because the SSA is mailing both you and your client every single notice or questionnaire, your client may get it first. They may be closer to that field office, DDS, or OHO. And so they get that piece of mail first, and they are the one calling you saying, hey, I just got the work history questionnaire. What do I do? And they're in a panic. Or they get a decision first and they call you saying, hey, I got denied. And it's not a great look when your client is informing you about a decision rather than you getting to inform them. So that client call happens a lot. We want you to be ready for it, and that's a big failure mode. And then third is the silent file, which is kind of what we just discussed around dormancy of cases, right? Cases suddenly go quiet. You're not tracking them, but that quietness might actually be an important signal that things are moving slower than you expected, or there's actually something that you didn't expect at all. So, that could be the fact that they're waiting to get medical records from all of the providers they reach out to, and it's taking longer than expected, and that's slowing down your case. Or it could be the fact that your client actually withdrew and you didn't know about that, right? So just the fact that these things are slipping by and you're not being able to stay on top of it may mean that there's actually something worth doing about that case. So the silent file is also a smell or a signal that you need to be doing something with that case. Great quote from one of our firms we work with, Will Viner Disability Law. We would receive calls from our clients telling us they've been approved or denied. That doesn't look very good professionally. So you really have to think about it, right? If you're delivering top-notch client communications, you should be the one reaching out to them rather than the SSA. And that's how you build that trust in your relationship with your client. So that way they can be easier to work with, and ultimately feel good about referring you to their friends and family when the time comes after the case is finished. So, poll that I want to have you guys kind of think about. So think about this to yourself, and we'll kind of go over this. Which does your firm feel the most? The missed deadline, things getting slipped by without you knowing about, the client call you weren't ready for, the silent file, or all of them or none of them. But just think about to yourself, which of these is the one you're facing? And it could be all of them, which would be an important signal. So we'll tally those and let you guys know afterwards of what we're hearing from folks. But often it's all of them is what I hear from firms that I'm working with. So let's start with kind of the framework on how to think about this. First, going with high volume firms, answer first. As you scale from 150 to 3,000 plus active cases, there's the same 4 questions. Question 1, can you see your entire caseload at once, right? Understanding your cases is the foundation of how you understand your practice and what's going on. If you can't see it all at once, that's a bad sign. Um, you know, 3 ways to think about this. Are you manually monitoring the ERE and only showing manually monitoring the ERE, so it only shows you what you think you need to look for. And the visibility breakdown from 150 to 300 active cases, right? The biggest signal is this all in your head? Is this all in your memory, or do you have some system in place to track what's going on with every case and how you review that each week? Lance White at Magnolia Disability said it turned constant case review into instant case review. That's something that Chronicle provides. But we'll also show you other ways to do that. So first, are you able to think about your entire caseload at once and see it in one place? This then kind of takes us to our first, way of framework of thinking about this. First is judgment work, right? There's 2 types of works at a firm. There's judgment work, which is what requires human expertise. Is it case strategy, medical record analysis, client counseling, hearing prep, or practice outreach, right? This is the kind of high value work that you as a representative, paralegal, case manager are probably doing that requires human expertise. And there's the second type of work, which is presence work, which is something a human does, but doesn't really need to think about. They're kind of logging into the ERE, checking for statuses, downloading spreadsheets, calling the SSA for updates, manually updating their case management system from the ERE, or answering status calls because the client called first. So these are kind of just manual work that's not that high value, but you need to get done. These are the 2 types of works that a lot of firms can kind of think about of what are they doing on a day-to-day basis. Ideally, they're doing a lot of judgment work, but a lot of firms end up doing a lot of presence work. So if a third of your case manager's week is presence work, you have a systems problem, not a staffing problem, right? That means they're spending a lot of time doing manual work that could be automated with better systems. And it doesn't necessarily mean you have to hire more people, which is a trap many firms get caught in, is just feeling, oh, well, we have a lot of this manual work, let's just hire more people. It's not a good use of time or your money. Second question, are you reactive or proactive? A reactive firm, spends time where rather than staying ahead of things, they're getting, something in the mail, it's already late, they find out, the client calls them, and they're scrambling, right? Kind of what we've been illustrating before, where it's very much driven by mail or client calls, and then that kicks off some workflow. You're being reactive rather than proactive. You're not being able to kind of manage your staffing and your time well because you're always caught scrambling on these deadlines. Versus, are you proactive, right? Where there is something that happens at the SSA, your systems actually surface it to you. They create the tasks or the workflows that you want to follow for each thing, and you can call the client first. So are you reactive or proactive is our second question. And so a great quote from Emily at Victory Disability is, with the systems they have in place, they're able to anticipate things before they become problems rather than being reactive because a client called them. So always think about that, right? Are you reactive or proactive? Are you waiting for things to hit you with deadlines that are just days away versus being proactive where your team's already ahead of it before the SSA even reaches out to you because you have that visibility into what's going on? So another nugget here for the proactive practice tests. think about this every day. Are you able within 5 minutes to think about what three cases need your team's attention today, right? So you already know off the bat what do you need to be working on. Which clients have CEs or even hearings scheduled in the next 2 weeks? Have you already called them, right? Are you able to proactively shepherd your clients through these processes? And third, how many clients have you called? How many clients have called you for a SaaS update in the last week? Um, you know, are you able to answer those questions without having to jump around or having them alert you of things going on rather than you being able to alert them when they call in? And then fourth, when did a client last tell you about their own case news, right? When have you been able, how often are you caught with them telling you about what's going on rather than you being able to tell them? And last, if your case manager was out today, what would fall through the cracks, right? So do you have redundancy in place where your team is able to cover for someone who's out because they have that full case visibility rather than you losing that information because they're out? If it takes more than 5 minutes to do any of these, you're operating reactively. It's not a criticism, right? A lot of firms struggle with these as they grow. And it's just a starting point to be like, okay, well, these are problems. What can I do and what systems can I get in place with my team or the current staff to actually start addressing some of these rather than just feeling, oh, well, to address all these, I need to hire more people. So then question three, what are you actually hiring for? Right? When you think about staffing up, which adds overhead, it takes time. It takes time to train people. You have to make sure you're actually doing it for the right reasons. So wrong reasons we see many firms have is, as I've kind of mentioned, right? Adding bodies to manage presence work. They're just checking the ERE. They're manually tracking documents. They're scanning mail. They are, doing data entry in your case management system. That's the wrong reason to be hiring people. That just means you're trying to use people to fix a technology problem rather than relying on technology that can solve it for you without that overhead. The right reason would be, hey, you know what? We want to actually up level our client experience. So we want people to be able to call clients and really take the time to hear them out, hear their stories, kind of find those nuggets to prepare for the hearing, or doing proactive outreach, intake conversion, right? Following up with folks who called in who are leads who haven't retained yet, or case strategy, right? So taking the time to really do a deep dive on the evidence, look at the medical records in depth, and actually find those nuggets that could help win the case and prepare you as the attorney representative to be ready for the hearing. A great quote from Diane Har from Hawaii Disability Legal Services. I don't want my people standing around scanning. I want them connecting with clients, right? Which is why we all get into this field of law is the ability to help clients and help these people who really need it. You want your staff being hired to help with that problem, which is client communications and service rather than just, pushing paper around. So the tell really being is if the next hire could partially be replaced by a better system, that's a system to build first rather than adding more headcount. So before your next hire, 3 questions before you post a job description, right? So these are things we want you thinking about before your next hire. Is the work or the JD that you're putting out, is it something that requires human judgment or human presence, right? Is it something that requires someone to actually be thinking about, the case and the client and kind of delivering service? Or are you just putting a JD out to fill out data in some system manually? How much of your team's capacity today is going to work on systems, going to work that systems should be handling, right? Even thinking about your staff today and what their breakdown of time is their time actually be something that could just be handled with better systems so that we can actually take their time back to be doing human judgment work? That's a good tell there, right? If we kind of mentioned before, if a third of their time is spent on just doing manual systems updates, you could probably automate that and get more out of your current team today before your next hire. Third, am I hiring to grow or am I hiring to keep up? Which was what Nathan was really teeing up at the beginning, right? Of what makes him sad. People are leaving money on the table because they're just hiring more people to keep up with all of these manual processes of moving paper from one desk to the other versus hiring people to grow their firm, to be able to do more client outreach, to really, take those marketing leads and service them better so that way they retain at a higher rate and then win at a higher rate. So, another way to think about it, if you are a 500, 600 case firm, each paralegal will spending, 15 to 20 hours a week in the ERE. That's a part-time salary that is presence work that you could be doing with better systems rather than hiring someone else. So once again, think about this. Are you hiring people to just keep up with pushing paper around, or are you hiring people to actually deliver better client service? Question 4. Does your operation scale with intake or against it, right? Especially if you're hiring folks like Nathan at Firmidable to really juice your marketing, really start getting a lot more leads in the door. Is your operation actually able to handle those new leads? Or are you going to end up hiring more people and therefore you're actually not getting better margins as you scale your firm? So most firms are built around handling work versus building a system and a set of tools that can actually scale with that non-linearly. So the exit isn't another hire, right? If you're always hiring people to scale with your intake, that's not the right work. They're doing presence work. You want to be able to hire less people. You want to be able to hire slower than you add new leads. So 400 cases is kind of the inflection point we see where most firms are kind of scrambling, where they didn't get the systems in place first. They added a bunch of new cases, and now they feel like they have to hire, 2 or 3 more people just to keep up, and that means their revenue and their bottom line isn't growing. So Lance White has another great quote here, which is, "Now our case review is no stress; it's stress-free. I know where all of my cases stand." So you really want to make sure you have your systems in place first as you start scaling your marketing spend to make sure that you're not just adding leads to add headcount to not grow your bottom line. And Nathan, I'm curious here, given you really think about kind of scaling marketing spend, how do you often see firms struggle with this problem of scaling their intake with their operations?
It's back to that classic thing, at least in business school, we talk about whether you're going to spend time working in your business or on your business. So I've been doing this long enough. I have definitely seen some firms just totally soar and some grow, and it's nice. But what's the difference? And I think when you decide you want to start your own firm, it's deciding I want to do more than just handle cases. I want to build something. And so you have to spend time and put effort and resources into that building part. And the ones that do that, and maybe even ultimately hire somebody else to go do the hearings, those are the ones that have done the best over the years from what I've seen. So I think everything you're saying here is falling neatly into that.
Absolutely. That's a really great point of,
Mhm.
you have to build this machine and you have to build this business can actually scale. Another way to think about this is, how do proactive firms actually work, right? What is the contrast? What's the best in class examples? Um, and as we all know, right, Mondays are the go day. You open up your computer and you have 100 emails, and the question is, how do you handle that? A reactive Monday that we see with many firms is logging the ERE, downloading the status report, hunting for what changed, fanning it out, and maybe only doing that once a week. So you don't actually even check midweek, what's changed in the ERE, what's changed on the status report. You're doing it once a week. And so you're very reactive. You get clients calling in because maybe they got a decision midweek that you didn't check the status report for yet and you missed, versus a proactive Monday where your systems have already flagged to you in the morning on Monday what has changed, what's important, so that way you can quickly go down that quick review and know what's going on without having to scramble or hunt and peck for what's changed. So that's what a good proactive Monday is. And it can actually happen every day, where every day is proactive and you have your system surfacing to you what's going on. For most folks, this could be a notification inbox as a task list. So some way of triaging and understanding, in a fraction of the time, what do I need to do versus spending your whole Monday being reactive to what's going on. So with that being said, I'm going to do a quick live demo of a proactive Monday of what it can look like for a best-in-class firm for what's going on. All right, you guys are still able to see my screen, right?
We can.
Awesome. Alrighty. So I'm going to start with, what is the classic example, right? What do most firms currently do today when they're being reactive, or maybe they actually do this a couple times a day, which is a good um, place to be in, but it could be better. So we'll start with the ERE, right? So either you're having someone in your mailroom open up each piece of mail and scanning it and trying to read each one and know what's going on, or you open the ERE. With the ERE, most firms do a couple things each week. First, they'll go to the status report, right? So in the ERE, you can go click Get Status Report. You choose the three different reports you get: hearing appeals or initial and recon. You open that up. You download the spreadsheet, and then you go back. You do it again for each of these. So I'll get the initial and recon one as well. I'll go down here and download the spreadsheet. Once again, it's very important you download the spreadsheets to have way more information than in the ERE, and that will download. And just to give you an example of what that looks right then, right? I now have this giant spreadsheet in Excel. We all know and love it. I'll zoom in a little bit. And I now have to go down this list and try to find out what's new, right? And they luckily have the status date. I can sort by the status date and try to see, I'll go across and they have these headings. I'll be like, okay, what hearings have been scheduled? It's not easy to see what's new. They'll go down and see what decisions have come in. So at least for most firms, what they'll do is they'll start by sorting on this status date. So I'll sort newest to oldest, sort, great. And this is an old one, so it's from 2024, but I'll be able to see, hey, what's new? I'll go across and try to hunt and peck and understand, what has changed on these. Same for the initial and recon list. It's the same giant spreadsheet. And if you guys don't know, they recently expanded this about a year ago to have a lot more information. And once again, I will go across this sheet and see, hey, what has come in? What has closed? What CEs have been scheduled? And they have these really crazy columns with all of the info requests and the CEs, where I can go here and see, a third party letter was set up. And a CE was scheduled. Once again, it's really, really messy data. Maybe I can find one down here. Nope. But as you can imagine, right? The reason why I show you in Excel is this is the way most firms do it. It's messy, it's complicated, and it's hard to keep track of. The next step you'll do is once you have, the 5 cases you're like, hey, something's going on with these, I should dive into them. What a good firm will do with their routine, if they don't have automated systems in place, is they will actually go into each case file in the ERE. So I'm going to go back to the ERE at home and I'll open the case file. So I'll click Access Claimant or Electronic Record. I'll enter some passcode. Oop. Sometimes it does not work. Oh no. I just tested this beforehand and they have broken the site again. So I won't spend too much time on this then, but you guys know there's a list of documents in the ERE that shows you exactly all the evidence, but also all the case documents, which are the notices they're mailing out to you. So the reason why good firms will spend time looking at this is they'll be able to actually see what's coming in the mail first. It requires them to go one by one into each case to see the list of documents and try to see what was recently added, so that way they can know what's going on and be proactive about this. So that is the old school way, really relying on the ERE, doing this check a couple times a week to know what's going on with all their cases. And that really, helps them stay proactive rather than reactive. That's a system they'll set up. They'll have a case manager or paralegal do, or they'll do it themselves if they're a solo. But as you can see, it takes a lot of time, but helps you be proactive rather than reactive. The alternative is you set up an ERE monitoring tool. And there's a couple tools out of the market. Obviously, I work for Chronicle, so I'm going to show you Chronicle today. But what Chronicle does is it monitors the ERE on your behalf, so you don't have to hunt and peck. You can know exactly what's going on and be very proactive with your cases. The first thing they'll do if they are doing the proactive flow with Chronicle is they'll just log into their dashboard and they'll see exactly what has been recently scheduled for hearings, what's upcoming, so I can know on my docket what hearings I need to prepare for. I'll be able to see my decisions, right? The most important thing is you file your appeals on time. I can see for my initial recon cases what the decisions were, if they were favorable or unfavorable. Same for hearing and same for appeals, right? So I can now know what do I need to work on, and I'll have my clock start for those appeals deadlines. If I actually click into these, Chronicle shows you how many days you have left for each appeal. So that way you know how many days you have before the deadline has passed. I can also go down and just quickly see, what has changed on status reports, and then also recent ERE access, right? The other important thing is once you've intake someone, you've signed that 1696 and submitted it, what cases has the ERE actually assigned to you for access so you now can actually go review those cases. And then the last one, which is the most valuable for most firms, is our recent document section. Chronicle is opening that e-file in the ERE every single day and scanning for what documents are new. So I can actually view now and see, hey, did a new medical record come in? Did a notice of hearing come in that I need to fill? Or even the earnings reports that I can now calculate SGA. This is like a virtual mailbox, so I can now stay on top of every piece of mail that the SSA is sending out and see it in Chronicle, and actually view them right here. So that way I don't have to actually open it up or download it in the ERE and see the document and keep track of it. So right here, I can see a request for medical records and keep track of that. I can also jump into any client. So for example, if the client is calling in, this is live and up to date. So I know exactly what the status of their case is. I can see the office it's with, what phone number it is in case I need to call them to get any additional updates. I can see what CEs were missed, right? Super crucial if you're working on initial recon cases at scale. If a client misses a CE, that's a bad sign and you need to remediate that. You'll be able to quickly see at a glance what CEs were missed, what hearings are coming up, if anything was canceled, and the full list of documents. But to take that even a step further, right? I don't want you guys hunting around and pecking in Chronicle. We have a great notification system where you can follow cases, turn on those notifications. And that means if I am a proactive firm, what I'm actually doing is I'm checking my inbox. And that's surfacing to me exactly what cases have had changes. So you can see here's a bunch of notifications from Chronicle for the cases I'm following and care about. Especially if I'm at a large firm, I can just pick and choose which cases I care about. I can now see, hey, a hearing is scheduled. And I can click into that and I get a full update of what's going on with that case right in my inbox. And that is my triage list every morning. I'm checking my email inbox to see what new things have come in. Another example, right? Unfavorable decision, right? I now know I need to actually go create a to-do for myself to go follow that appeal. So it's all in my inbox at a glance. So that way I know what's going on in my cases. I can be proactive. And this system really scales well as you can add more and more cases because you have one system and one place to look where everything's going on. And you can break that up between case managers and they can each get their own set of notifications. So that is the Proactive Monday, where I'm able to see a notification list that I can turn into tasks each day to know what is the most important thing to be working on for each of my cases, and I can triage them in a fraction of the time. And just to kind of recap that, right? Each SSA event, so whether that's a status change, a hearing getting scheduled, a CE, is one row that I don't need to dig through, and I immediately know what's happened. It's surface, not hunted, right? That's super important. You saw those giant spreadsheets out of the ERE. I want to be able to quickly know what is important rather than having to hunt for what's important or having to wait for the mail. So once again, it's surface, it's not hunted. And then the 10-minute triage. In 10 minutes, can I know exactly what I need to do today? What is the most important? What has changed rather than having to have a client call in and having to scramble because of that client call? So if you guys want to have that triage list I kind of just went through, we have a great tool for you guys on chroniclelegal.com/playbook. You can scan this QR code, but we kind of break down this routine for you, whether you're using Chronicle or not. We have both versions of it of how to use the ERE most effectively or use Chronicle to have that Monday morning case triage checklist complete. So with that, last thing to say, build a system before build the chaos, which is remember you're building a machine, you're building a scalable business. So that's something to think about as you guys scale your intake, is you need to have the right systems in place. And with that, I'll hand it back to Nathan.
All right. Well, now's my favorite part. We're going to do some live Q&A, unscripted. No telling where this is going to go. Here's one for you. How could Chronicle help with the problem of SSA not processing appointment forms correctly and establishing ERE access? Can y'all help with that?
Great question. So that is one of the questions I get most often right now, as I do demo calls or talk to my firms. Unfortunately, Chronicle can't do anything about that. It's a problem at the SSA. They are working on training their staff to be a little bit faster, but Nosker and Nader are talking constantly to the SSA to try to get this problem solved. The way we think about what Chronicle does is it gives you peace of mind of knowing what have they assigned, right? We give you notifications or that dashboard box that shows you which cases have been assigned, so at least you can check those off a little faster than rather having to hunt and peck to understand what have they assigned.
Okay. And how long do you find it typically takes a staff to learn Chronicle?
Yeah, so honestly, not more than a week. We offer a team training that's about 30 minutes, but we've built our system to be very intuitive. So that way your staff can just pick it up from day one and start getting value out of it. There's not a lot of complex features. We try to make it everything as easy as possible. And what we really pride ourselves on is we've worked directly with case managers, paralegals, and representatives to build the features you saw today, given that they are the ones who know what they need the best.
Okay. Somebody asked, is Adobe Acrobat used or needed?
Adobe Acrobat is not needed. We actually host all of the documents in the cloud and they're viewable out of your browser. You can still download a merged packet. So if you want all of the evidence combined into one large PDF that you can download and view in Adobe Acrobat for annotating prior to the hearing, you are able to do that with Chronicle, but there's no requirement to have Adobe Acrobat.
Okay. I'm actually going to combine two questions. There's some people asking about, well, is AI helping you, provide more valuable information? Somebody said, anything to even help them summarize the medical records within your system.
Yeah, that's a super great question. I know it's the topic du jour right now, which is AI and how does AI help with the disability practice. I didn't show it today in our little live demo, but Chronicle does offer a couple different AI capabilities to help with the case management process. First, we do offer medical chronology. We actually offer three different providers through Dodo Detect, LexMed, and Super Insight. We really believe that you should be able to choose the AI that you want. So we have access to your evidence. We make it easy to use whatever tool you want. So those three providers are available through Chronicle, and they will summarize the entire medical record for you in a couple different ways. And then we also offer AI brief writing services. So if you want a pre-hearing brief or an AC brief, those are also provided in Chronicle through LexMed, and they're really great products. And you can try them out if you want for free in Chronicle. So it's super easy to see if you like them and compare them to your previous briefs. And then the last AI feature we offer is hearing transcriptions. So if you're post-hearing, you want to do a post-hearing brief or just review what happened for your own notes, we offer AI transcriptions that are diarized and give you minute-by-minute breakdowns of the whole hearing. So it's really easy to search. And so those are kind of the couple different AI features available in Chronicle today to help with the case management.
Okay. And I'm going to combine a couple of questions again. One was like, when do you recommend firms start exploring solutions like this? And somebody else said something like that, but especially we just talked about their team is already feeling stressed and maxed out.
Yeah. So I'll take this from two different perspectives, right? If you are a small firm that's growing, we actually recommend you try this as soon as possible. And we don't say this because we're trying to sell Chronicle. We honestly think that if you're starting a new firm and you're planning to grow quickly, getting that foundation right is so important. And so these tools are not expensive to try. They scale with you. They're not expensive from the get-go. And so getting those systems in place and really dialing it in helps you scale faster because you don't have to hire more people and you can really lean on your skills that you have around working the case rather than having to spend a lot of time hiring and building systems and scrambling in the latter part of your growth story. So definitely as early as possible try these tools out, and then if you are already a large firm that's struggling, obviously pick it up. Change management is hard. It's obviously hard to think about, well, I'm introducing a new tool to my staff and we have to train them on them. A good tool doesn't need a lot of training. And we at Chronicle like to think our tool is quite good. And we've had a lot of success stories where within a week, firms are already up and running. So don't worry about that. We handle a lot of the training and a lot of the hand holding to make sure your staff is up to speed when this tool is implemented. So definitely don't wait. If you have a large staff that's scrambling, get this tool in place, and we'll make sure that you guys don't have to worry about the change management.
And what about somebody said, how hard is it to switch to Chronicle if they've been using another tool like Assure for a long time?
Yeah, so we try to make it as easy as possible to switch off of other tools. We've had hundreds of firms at this point move off of Assure to Chronicle or even use it at the same time, right? It's not an either or. You can run both systems in parallel. So it's super easy. Everything that Assure does, Chronicle also does. And then there's a lot of bells and whistles on top of that. Um, so don't worry about the change from Assure. And the key thing to remember here and the difference between Chronicle versus Assure is really the added value of daily visibility into the e-file, right? Knowing exactly what's getting mailed out so you can be proactive versus reactive is the key to what makes Chronicle special and helps your firm scale faster. And then lastly, I'll just say on a cost side, because everyone's obviously worried about switching software, there is no additional switching cost from Chronicle to Assure in terms of repaying for cases. We'll take all the cases that you have in Assure and transition to Chronicle for free.
Somebody asked, what's the differences in the medical chronology providers available that you mentioned?
That's a great question. And I could spend a whole webinar talking about the differences. It's really up to your own personal taste. And that's why we provide multiple providers is everyone has their own nuances of what they want to have in medical chronology. Some want them to be very detailed. Some of them want them to be very succinct and concise. The reason why Chronicle provides three different options is so that way you can try each of them for free and see which one you like and want to move forward with. So my best recommendation, try them out because they're all just a little bit different on the output they give, different in the price and the quality. So, definitely something you want to test and, apply your own personal preferences to.
Okay, and I'm going to do one last one, and it's kind of a human one, so I like this. Do you have any
Mhm.
recommendations on how to delegate more of the proactive work to other people on the team, aside from just making it a top-down approach?
Yeah, so I think this, there's kind of two ways to think about this. One is just, systems and processes, right? You have to give your team agency to work cases and feel like they own it. So what I've seen some firms do is they, either assign cases with a full life cycle to one paralegal and say, hey, this is your case. And, you own this end to end, or they do it by function, right? So a team owns initial and a team owns hearing and a team owns appeal. But that ownership is what really gives people agency to feel like they can be proactive around cases rather than reactive, rather than saying, hey, your job is just answering the phone. That's not a good way to help someone be proactive. Right? You want to say, hey, you own this segment, this set of cases, or this segment of the life cycle, and your job is to get them from point A to point B rather than being overly prescriptive about what they need to do. The other way we also see done is just aligning incentives, right? If you are open to it, you can always do some sort of variable comp of like, hey, you guys get paid when your cases get from A to B, rather than saying you get paid for the number of calls you do, right? So that way they're working smarter rather than just doing these menial tasks all the time. So having some sort of bonus structure where, hey, based on the number of cases they get, from intake to initial complete, that's what you're getting bonused on.
All right, awesome. Well, there are a lot of questions coming in, so I think that means you hit a nerve today. So
Yeah.
this was a good topic. Tell you what, if we couldn't get to your question today, we do have a list of them. We'll reach out on our own afterwards, and you have our contact info up there also. So feel free to reach out to us individually. Thanks so much for everybody for participating. Everyone today will get a copy of the recording. You're also going to get a survey on the presentation. Please do provide your feedback. We want to provide the kind of content that you find valuable, so we need to hear back from you. On behalf of everybody here at Firmidable, as well as at Chronicle, thanks for joining us today. Now go out there and get some great new clients.